Hello student, welcome to the KTHM e-learning portal. I am PRATIK SHINDE, working as assistant professor in Department of Zoology, KTHM College, Nasik. In this lecture, we are going to study the chapter ecosystem and we are going to cover the topic cropland ecosystem, food chain and food web. Let's start with kinds of ecosystem. There are different kinds of ecosystem that we see in a previous lecture. But in this lecture, we are going to study the artificial ecosystem. Example of artificial ecosystem is cropland ecosystem. Cropland ecosystem is an example of artificial ecosystem. This photograph shows the soybean ecosystem and maize ecosystem. These are the example of cropland ecosystems. Then we start with maize cropland ecosystem. In previous lecture, we studied the natural ecosystem. That is the forest ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Natural ecosystems are self-regulating systems without much direct interference and manipulation by man. However, in nature, we also find another kind of ecosystem where man is very much involved in their operations. These are the cropland ecosystem that are artificial or man-engineered, where in order to obtain more food, cloth, timber, medicine and other useful products, man become responsible for replacement of natural ecosystem. To secure a maximum production, man make much plant manipulation in the physiochemical environment. This include addition of fertilizer to soil, use of chemicals for disease control, proper irrigation practices, etc. Thus, a cropland ecosystem is an artificial ecosystem. AM frequently go through a single species of one choice. We have ecosystem of dominant crop species like wheat, maize, jawar, paddy, sugarcane, vegetable, etc. under the most suitable condition of their growth and yield. The following are the components of a maize cropland ecosystem. A maize cropland ecosystem consists two components, abiotic components and biotic components. We start with abiotic components. This includes a climatic condition of the region where the crop may grow most successfully, and the various minerals, particularly carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus and the potassium in a soil and atmosphere. In such a field, man generally use chemical fertilizer to soil. Maize generally grow best in slightly alkaline soil with good aeration. Then the biotic component. The biotic component are the living component. They include producer, consumer and decomposer. The producers are the autotroph or the self-nourishing. It includes plants. The dominant plant species would be a naturally GMS. In a crop ecosystem, crop is an dominant plant, and beside them some weeds grow into the crop, such as Cynodon, Dactylon, Euphorbia, Hirta, and Digitaria species also contribute to the primary production of the field. The crop and weed trap the solar energy and convert into the food energy. That's why the weeds included under the producers. Then the consumers. The consumers classify into the three trophical levels: primary consumer, secondary consumer, and the top are the tertiary consumers. The consumers are herbivores or maybe carnivores. Let's start with primary consumers. These are the herbivores which feeds on crop leaves and fruits. Primary consumers are represented by a variety of animals, big as well as small. The smaller animals include chiefly the insect and aphids, thrips, beetles, etc., which feeds and lay their egg on maize leaves. Large animals are rabbit, rat, bird, man, feeding on leaves, fruit and flower of the maize. Then the secondary consumer. The secondary consumers feeds on the primary consumers are the herbivores. The example of secondary consumers, bird, frog, etc. The birds feeds on the leafhopper. The tertiary consumer are the carnivores which feeds on secondary consumer. The example of the tertiary consumer is snake and hawk. The hawk feed on rat and smaller bird. Then the decomposer. These are the microbes present in soil as well as air that decompose the dead organic matter of the plant and animals. These are chiefly bacteria and fungi responsible for decay, decomposition and humidification, making the minerals available again to the producers. The example of fungi, Aspergillus, and the example of bacteria, Bacillus, Pseudomonas and Actinomyces. These are the most useful bacteria found in soil for the decomposition. Then the food chain. The transfer of food energy from producer through a series of organisms like herbivore to carnivore to the decomposer with the repeated eating and being eaten is known as food chain. In other words, a food chain is an sequential pathway that shows the flow of energy from one organism to the another. In a community which has producer, consumer and decomposer, the energy flow in a specific pathway. Energy not be created or nor be destroyed, but it flow from one trophic level to the another through the different organisms. Producers utilize the radiant energy of sun which is transferred to the chemical form, that is ATP, during the photosynthesis. This energy, these green plants occupy in any food chain the first trophic level, that is the producer level, and are called as primary producers. The energy as stored in food matter manufactured by green plants is then utilized by the plant eaters, that is the herbivores. This is the secondary trophic level, the primary consumer level, and called the primary consumers. The herbivores in turn are eaten by carnivores. These are the third trophic level, the secondary consumer level, and called the secondary consumer. This is turn may be eaten still by other carnivore and the tertiary consumer level, that is tertiary consumers. Some organisms are omnivore, eating the producers as well as the carnivores at lower level in the food chain. Such organisms thus may occupy more than one trophic level in the food chain. In many food chains, energy flow from primary producer to primary consumer, that is the herbivore, from primary consumer to the secondary consumer, that is the carnivores, and from the secondary consumer to the tertiary consumer, that is the carnivores or omnivores, and so on. The simple chain of eating being eaten away is known as food chain. All of these categories occur in an ecosystem. They represent the different trophic level from the Greek word tropos, which means feeder. Organisms from each trophic level feeding on one another make up a series called as food chain. A food chain in an pond ecosystem starts with phytoplankton and macrophytes, going through the water beetle, smaller fish, bigger fish, and bird, large animal, and so on. The forest food chain includes the trees and plants are the producers level. Then rat, rabbit, deer, and elephant are the primary consumers who eat the plant, grass, and trees. The jackal, fox are the secondary consumer, and finally the tiger and lion are the tertiary consumers. Food web are made up of many food chains linked together. The food web are more stable than the food chain. Various food chains are often interlinked at different trophic level from a complex interaction between different species from the point of view of food. Food web provides more than one alternative of food to the most of the organisms in an ecosystem and thus increase their chance of survival. However, food chain in natural conditions never operate as an isolated sequence, but are interconnected with each other, forming some short or interlocking pattern which is referred to as food web. Under the natural condition, the linear arrangement of food chain hardly occurs, and these remain truly interconnected with each other to the different type of organism at a different trophic level. For example, cropland food chain. In the absence of rabbit, grass also be eaten by mouse. The mouse in turn may be eaten directly by hawk or by snake first, which is then eaten by hawk. Thus, in nature, there are found alternatives which are together constitute some sort of interlocking pattern, the food web. In this lecture, we have studied the cropland ecosystem is an artificial ecosystem. Cropland ecosystem have two components, abiotic component and biotic component. Abiotic component such as climatic factor, inorganic and organic compound, and fertilizer and pesticide. The biotic components include producer, consumer, and decomposers. The producers are cropland and weeds. They are autotrophic. The consumers classify into three types: primary, secondary, and top consumer. In a primary consumer, we have studied the leafhopper feed on cropland. Secondary consumer, bird feed on leafhopper. The top consumer, hawk feed on small bird or rat. Then we have studied a food chain. In a food chain, then we have studied food chain. Food chain is a sequential pathway of one organism feed on another in an ecosystem. Then we have studied a food web. Food web is an all the food chain are interconnected and form a food web. Thank you.